Hello, all. Welcome to our morning lives. New moons are always going to make sleeping a little harder for a couple days before and a couple days after. We are in a new moon in Gemini. Every single one of us has Gemini somewhere in their astrology. You just would have to pull up the actual wheel of your birth chart to find out where Gemini is. And the Gemini theme should be loud. We are both Gemini suns, and I feel like new moons call you to pull up the higher energy expression of the Gemini sign. And I think for Gemini, the higher expression is just letting your curiosity lead, being a lot more playful.
Communicating.
Yeah, we went to a new moon circle last night, and we also talked a lot about how, along with communicating, it's also just knowing how to find the perspective with different versions of yourself, talking to your higher self, your inner child, and just knowing how to find multiple perspectives and lovingly just know that where you're at in life is there's always just perspective to be found. We talked about that a lot, and I think in our new moon circle. Yeah, so knowing how to connect in with higher self and inner self, and inner child self. So we were bringing that up yesterday, and I think that's a little good starting conversation point that for a lot of us, not necessarily our childhood household gave us the things that we needed to feel really like loved and supported and actually know how to see what we need. And so that can cause so much later relationship dysfunction because you don't know how to ask for what you need because you've never actually had your needs recognized. And yeah, it makes it really hard to connect with people when you don't know how to talk about your emotional experience correctly, and know how to advocate and share it. And I think by working with your inner child, you're going back to some of the things that, firstly, were effortless and fun and easy before the world kind of shifted, and gave you rules and tried to tell you that you had to be the best at it, to care about it, and just tried to seemingly box you in. And it's going back to those things, remembering those things, but also lovingly kind of reparenting yourself and being able to accept yourself and love yourself for all your big feelings and knowing how to actually handle your feelings in a different way. Yeah.
Oh,
Go.
I was just gonna say that I feel like I've been on a reparenting journey since probably right before my Saturn return. Like I'd say about 2021, right into 2022, I started to realize that maybe I have been in survival mode my whole life, and all of the things Jen just said. So it's been like a long road, and I feel like my inner child honestly was probably the easiest one to heal, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like holding space for the things that little me loved was so easy, because I feel like our most childish self is so innocent and just had no idea what was going on. It's been my inner teen that's really the final boss of reparenting, because your teen self didn't at that point, they already had a lot of what Jen was just talking about thrust upon them, and then whether they were taking it in and trying to fit the box, or if they were pushing the box away and just not reacting to it in a very healthy way because no proper emotional outlets. That's my take, is it's definitely a journey, and it's still worth taking though. But yeah, definitely the inner teen side of that is way more I think intentional, and a little bit more. It's not as easy as what makes you happy? I like to swing. Okay, let me go swing. Let me just let that inner child out for a second.
Yeah, I think though one layer with the inner child that does exist that's more problematic. First of all, there's just making space to slow down and be playful, but it's also the side that you have to break through shame patterns of actually exposing caring about something really big, because in reality we all usually care a lot and love a lot, and we have a lot of shame patterns about showing that we care and like really loudly loving something. So we play everything really cool and we act like we don't care about anything. And for your inner child to come forward too, it's also just letting yourself love a lot bigger. Really happy in the fact that you can just, get so excited in the moment about something, and that that doesn't have to be shame around that.
I think that gets easier when you're surrounded by your people.
Yeah.
I think that's why that layer doesn't like show up for me as much anymore. You're saying it, and I remember that at the beginning of the journey, because I was not surrounded around people who like would hold my joy the same.
Yeah, hold my joy is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
But then, the reason we're talking about all of this is because Gemini kind of calls you to look at, I think Gemini is just constantly existing in every version of themselves, like really easily. Gemini is an air sign. It knows how to shapeshift, and it knows how to like see endless perspective. And I think that's because Gemini really holds every version of themselves really close. Gemini is mercurial, typically holds like a different kind of memory log compared to most signs too.
I think we're also like, there's so many vast perspectives with Gemini. Both Jen and I have Gemini stellium, so like the energy is like strong with us.
Stellium means 3 or more planets in one sign.
Yeah, so it's a lot of energy in that one particular part of our chart. And so I think it's with us always, but I think when Gemini gets lit up, and especially for those that might have like an empty Gemini house, like all of a sudden you're presented with tons and tons of perspectives that you didn't see before, and that probably can be really overwhelming. But also there's a good reason for having that vast knowledge at your fingertips. So everyone is a Gemini. Basically, you know what's so funny, Sky? Like, everyone has Gemini in their point. Our family has actually a ton of Pisces in our charts. It's scary.
So if you look at your chart circle, you will have every single zodiac sign will be impacting some area of your life. So if you kind of feel like there's a sign you don't get along with, I think it really helps to go to your birth chart. You can just Google birth chart, pull up your actual circle chart, and then look at the house that there's 12 houses. See which house you have that sign that maybe you don't get along with as well. And then look up themes around that house, because there is some area of life that we all are interacting with every single sign. And it gives you a lot of perspective. Like, for example, we were talking about Aries energy. So I have an Aries planet. V doesn't have an actual planet in Aries. And Aries is like very fiery and impulsive and like charges at things. And V doesn't have that as like an instinct, because there's not like a planet that pushes them in that way. But when we go to the birth chart and we see that Aries is in their 5th house, the 5th house is the house that involves a lot of themes around creativity and expression. And V gets so many creative ideas all day. Like, we should do this. Oh, wouldn't that be fun if we cut this up?
And so if we did that, why don't you just get like a $5 vase from from Goodwill and put a drain hole in it, and then that's a like cuter flower pot than the $20 regular flower pot.
Endless spewing out like Aries ideas.
It's like honestly probably the most harmless house, to be honest.
It's cute.
But I also don't actually have any planets in Aries, so until there's planets transiting in the sky, which means like the current sky has planets in that section of my chart, then I start feeling Aries energy. But otherwise, it feels very almost hidden from me most of the time.
Usually when you don't have an actual planet in that sign, the energy doesn't it doesn't get as loud. But let me give you one other like nerdy, this is a little more high level. I'm an astrologer, so I like love astrology. But Another more high level thing you can do. So if Gemini is an empty house for you, you can look at the themes of that house, which is good. But you also want to look at the planet that rules that sign. So if your ninth house is Gemini, you want to look where Mercury is. And Mercury is going to give you some context on how Gemini energy actually functions in your chart. So you can always kind of weave information. This is where astrology can get next level deep. And yeah, for V not having Aries, we look to where Mars is and can understand like a little more context on how
my Mars is in Virgo, so I feel like I try to intellectualize my anger so hard.
Yeah.
And like when I am angry, I either throw myself into work or I like make this hyper specific like list. Like I'm working on this one project that is for our next protest, and it is a doozy. It's it's a reader. It's a like I'm gonna make you talk about it and understand the assignment fully. It's very Virgoan in nature. Astrology is kind of nice because you can either take it in like little baby chunks here and there, which is what keeps it more vague and broad, or if like you really get nerdy with it like we do, like you can get super hyper specific to the point where you're like, whoa, like you kind of feel like it just read you to filth and it's just a blueprint of the moment you were born.
Yeah, and you kind of, so our, like your astrology birth chart too, it's fun to know like where things like new moons, like we're in right now, is hitting. But I also think it's just cool because as you live the context of your life, you just add more meaning to what your birth chart is. So your birth chart is like going to show you what your lived experience is, but it also helps in retrospect to be like, oh, that makes so much sense with this planet combination. Like, of course, that's how that
or you
played
get
out.
like the other person's chart. I slowly have gathered all of my family's charts. And I have run every single synastry chart, and I can see where exactly in this moment in time we were both arguing and fighting because this and this do not get along. And it doesn't necessarily excuse a lot of what happened in the past, but it validates how frustrating it was on my end for like what I was seeing in their character that like just doesn't like go well with my character, and vice versa. Like the people that I'm like really, really attuned with, I'm like, oh, okay, like we both have this, or like this and this sync up, and it starts to make sense from a like, I don't know, like an unbiased star perspective. Like
we are like secret investigators with like red yarn for everyone's birth charts that we know.
Absolutely. This is just a normal morning. We're just letting you guys in on the chit chat.
Yeah, V also is very knowledgeable about like deities and
Or I just have these channels I drop into for a few years. I've done herbs. I've done
I want to finish off this point, but
I'm
your
sorry.
deities. No, so I was just bringing up that you just see the symbolism of animals so easily and tied to what deity might be like kind of like seeking acknowledgement, or maybe it's like a call to kind of work with that energy a little bit more. So like we had 6 black bears in our backyard. This was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, and then
fresh move.
Ran into a pregnant deer. I had just crazy animal encounters. We ended up doing like some digging into it, and it felt very Artemis core. So we've been really honoring Artemis, and then to find out that Artemis's season is at the very end of spring.
It's now.
It's now. It was really beautiful. So I've been kind of channeling into Artemis energy because of that symbolism, and it was really freaking cool.
Yeah. I don't always, it's really funny how like deities show up, because sometimes like I'll start to see their energy, and part of me is like, I'm honestly too tired. Like they take a lot of work and a lot of like, you want to make sure that when you work with deities that you're like actually showing up to the plate. It's not as casual as just a personal practice, I think. So sometimes like those energies will show up and I'll be like, la 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 la, I can't see you. But then other times I've had a couple deities like literally like kind of be like, that's cool, when you're ready I'm here, and they waited for years because I missed took them as an ancestor.
I think so. What V, to translate even what V is saying, is I think like it's honoring a lot bigger energy. So obviously it's just like a bigger exchange of magic. So if you are going to tune into the magic of something a little bit more potent and powerful, that can create big changes in your life that are really positive. But you also have to, every relationship as you enter into the spiritual world is a lot of honoring the balance of giving and receiving. So if you're going to work with deities, you also then have to be intentional about your offerings and just making sure that there is like consistent honoring of that energy. And you can always put boundaries around it and cut it off, but you just have to do it all with intention. It's not something just to open and then forget and not care about it. Like, you have to just be a lot more intentional.
You also have to come at it from a much more respectful space, I think, because obviously, like, Catholicism and Christianity have been so big. I think some people look at other deities, like, a little bit too casually and, like, not with enough... I don't know a better word. I don't really love the word respect, but like, not enough like intentional like movement towards them, and maybe you're a little like too casual with them.
I think like a good step one, we are both very witchy. I think a good first step to anything is creating a space in your house to put an altar. Setting up like an intentional space that you go to consistently. It doesn't have to necessarily be every day, but it's like carving out a section of your house that when I'm in this space, this is going to be my space to receive information. And it's amazing once you set the intention for something. So you put your energy towards creating the altar and you create a sacred space and you say, this is my sacred space. You will get so much more power when you are in that space and connection, because it becomes like a consistent channel for you. Like, I can feel the energetic difference when I'm in front of my altar space. And then you can decide then from there what elements you want in your altar. So you can connect more with a deity, or you can connect more just with your own personal angels, guides, whoever supports you. If you don't think there's necessarily support like that, it can even just be a space for your higher self or just higher source, anything that kind of resonates for you. But I think we often don't create intentional spaces in our homes, and that can change a lot. So circle it back to like our original point about the new moon in Gemini. I think Jupiter is about to exit Gemini. It's been there. So there has been this exaggerated, Jupiter's such a big planet, wherever it is in your birth chart, it expands that energy. When it hits a sign in the current sky, it's going to expand that energy. So we've had tons of Gemini energy in the ethers, and this has been like overthinking. So if you have felt anxiety from having so many thoughts and not knowing what to do with all those thoughts, which I think we've had so much information thrown at us, especially if you live in the United States. And Jupiter's about to shift out. So this new moon holds a lot of energy of creating balance in our thinking patterns and how we're communicating them out. But Uranus is about to move into Gemini, and that starts in July. And that is going to show us how to alchemize Gemini energy with no limits. And I honestly think we are going to get into a point where we're going to be really shifting and imagining something different for our world and really trying to work more together in social circle. So we were also talking about that at our moon circle last night. So the Gemini energy is going to be a lot more honed in. So this is a really positive new moon to manifest with, because we're closing out a chapter with Jupiter. Jupiter has been in Gemini. It usually stays in a sign for about a year and a half, and it'll be shifting into Cancer. And I think the Gemini energy's been a little too big. And I also think we just don't know what to do with it. So I think the shadow of Gemini is intaking so much stuff, like reading 10,000 books and then not telling anybody anything, and then having all that information just floating in your brain. It's exhausting. And so I think the more alchemized Gemini energy takes something in and then finds a way to output it, like, constantly. Gemini can do a lot through verbal processing, but also just sharing. Gemini's supposed to be a messenger. It's not supposed to know how to teach someone something with like perfect accuracy. It's more going, I would look into this. You should look into this. This was really fascinating for me. Like, it's just sending people on their little rabbit holes. But lovingly, like, also knowing the access to how many things there are to look into is a gift of our strong Gemini. So we know a lot of avenues, and we can let you figure out. We don't have to teach you in a perfect way, but we can give you little samplings of a lot of things so that you understand that there is other perspectives to be found about different things. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to feel a lot more balanced on just knowing what to do with all the information we just took in without Jupiter being so loud. It's going to be helpful. We also were sharing, we just entered Gemini season, so that when we say that, the sun is now in Gemini. The sun was in Taurus. So with all the fire energy, we have Saturn in Aries now. We have Neptune in Aries now. Fire and Taurus energy is not very easy to deal with. So there's been more anxiety the last couple weeks too, because we haven't been able to output the fire as easily. Gemini is going to know how to work with the fire a lot more. And then once Jupiter gets off of Gemini, Jupiter's really positive for Gemini. It's just been a lot. So if you don't normally have a lot of Gemini in your chart, it's probably felt overwhelming. What we deal with as a normal baseline in our brain is a lot. A lot. I think only we understand each other. Most people don't understand us. It's just kind of how it goes. Constant verbalizing. And Uranus has been going through Taurus for everybody. So wherever Taurus is in your chart, it's been given Uranus energy to help move it forward, and rebel out of any of the blocks of that energy. And so we've all, as a collective, have seen the consequences of getting comfortable, not trying to fight for change as much, and then all of a sudden really realizing we all need to. We've had to kind of look at our comfortability and just lots of themes of Taurus. And now Uranus is going to be entering Gemini. Gemini is so unbound in perspective that what is going to happen from now until 2033 with that Uranus and Gemini transit is going to be so interesting to witness, for sure, because Gemini craves so much freedom. Uranus craves so much freedom. So I think things are going to shift a lot with this. Taurus energy, there is just a lot slower of themes. It had to do a lot with our material focus in this world. Gemini is so ethereal in its essence anyway. To explain, we talked about the 2020 astrology even, but there has been, this time in history has been looked at for astrology for a really long time because it's very rare. There are outer planets that don't change signs until 35 years of time. In this year of 2025, if we are just feeling really panicked, it's also just like validating to know that we had Neptune change signs, which is an outer planet that doesn't change usually for like 16 years. Uranus changed signs. Pluto changed signs. Saturn changed signs. These planets don't change signs for long periods of time. So every single outer planet has shifted.
And outer planets are like much more like affecting the collective. It's not just like the reason people ask you about like your big 3 or your big 6 is because like that those planets change enough within a 12-month cycle that like it gets a lot more personal planet type things. But when all the planets she just named, that is all of us. It affects all of us differently, but it's all of us.
Yeah. So you're like Pluto, like all millennials are pretty much Pluto and Scorpio. All of Gen Z is Pluto Sagittarius. Like it lumps us into these big collective bubbles. So when every single outer planet is changing signs, we are dealing with like a change in the world that's so loud. And we only have one more outer planet. Uranus changes at the very beginning of July. It's July 10th. 7th. And then every single outer planet will have change signs. And I think what we've described it as is someone's just throwing tons of new ingredients at us, and we don't even know what to cook yet because we just keep being given more ingredients.
Yeah.
We are almost done with having all the ingredients laid out on the table, and I think we'll get to finally start building off this new energy. But it's been a chaotic year.
Like even just 3 days ago, Saturn moved out of Pisces and into Aries.
That happens every 2.5 years.
Yeah. So like that in itself is such a, and then also too, Pisces is like the end of a cycle and Aries is more of the beginning of a cycle. So it's not just shifting signs, but it's also like cyclically changing. We're gonna have Saturn Aries for like a couple months, but then retrograde happens, which is when it kind of goes backwards, or it seems to go backwards. Nothing actually goes backwards. I just think it's the points in space we're at. But it's going to retrograde back into Pisces and leave Pisces finally for sure in November. Thank you, November. But yeah, so you have Saturn jumping into a new cycle. What just moved into Neptune? Neptune just left Pisces and jumped into the new cycle of Aries. So you have that Pluto being the big generational planet just permanently moved into Aquarius earlier this year. It's having its first retrograde where it won't teeter back into Capricorn. So like, yeah, when you hop signs, it's just so many like different new energies, and the fact that we've had like 4 or 5 collective energies, not only hop signs, but then a couple of those planets are making like completely new cycle hops. That's a lot to not just have a second to like breathe and alchemize and go, okay, this is what that feels like.
This
like
is
right
why
now,
the world is where it's at.
Yeah.
Like it's next level.
Right now, I feel like with everything that's started changing since like Pluto shifting into Aquarius all the way to what will be 7/7 Uranus, like I can feel all of the energies. I can't quite place like, oh, this particular lesson that keeps coming up is because of Pluto, but this lesson is because of Saturn, because like so many things have been shifting and changing and like hopping back and forth on that line in retrogrades that like it's just been a lot. So yeah, I'm excited to get to like 7/7 and just like breathe into all the energy and figure out what the greater lessons are. I keep getting messages of like, this is a period of like pause and rest and just taking things as they come. And I feel like it's just because there's just too many energies at play right now to like actually alchemize anything.
I think the sky is really calling us to fight for humanity in a way we never have. I think right now we are entering and taking down, like Pluto is in Capricorn from 2008 until February of this year. And Capricorn rules structures and like systems. And it exited and it's in Aquarius. We are in Pluto and Aquarius age. Like this is the collapsing of an old system that we don't have space for anymore. And I think this big launch at Aries energy and our like collective astrology too is asking us to fight for what we actually need and fight for humanity. And we all have individual stuff that we can stand firm in and be proud of, but I also think like we're gonna all need each other in different ways. And I think just being able to be proud of what your strengths are is so important, and that we all have a piece in the bigger puzzle piece, and we should be able to use our own unique strengths to all come together and shift things. That's what I think Pluto and Aquarius is really calling us all about. I think it's going to feel a lot better when there's not so many big new undertone energies, because every time one of these outer planets shift, we feel like a buzzing all around us, because it's like new energy alchemizing that we are now having to work with. We've had so many of those that I think it's hard to say what, but we The summer is going to create a lot more output than we've had. And that's going to feel a little bit better. We've been really trying to focus on building community.
Especially in-person community. I think we both, 2020 gave both of us the opportunity to build our online communities. And I think we found good outlets for that. We do have these lives that we do every weekday morning, or at least for the last couple of months. June's going to be a little different. But we have our like Sensible Soul community, which is a little bit more like this is like a public forum, right? Like anyone can hop in and out here, but like in our Sensible Soul community, it's like everyone's like very like-minded, like on some part of their healing journey. And I think that's really beautiful. But right now we've also been focusing a lot of energy in connecting to our like in-person community.
Yeah, looking at local. So I think, a few pieces of advice. We're not going to stay on like a ton longer, but if you do not have a journaling practice, I really recommend getting a journal, writing the date down. You can start today because new moon in Gemini is so get a journal core if you don't do it. Write down today's date and then write just bullet points of everything that's going on in your life. Think of journaling less as you have to necessarily, write in these perfect sentence
Dear
structure.
diary.
Yeah. And instead think of it as a time vault.
Yeah.
Write down the main themes that are happening, and every single time, so there's a new moon almost every month. It's about a month of time is what I'm meaning.
30 days.
And then full moon happens like every 2 weeks. But if you keep tabs on these big transits, you can see what the universe is trying to teach you because you're actually holding form to what the lessons are. So I was actually reading, so we're in a new moon in Gemini. I read the full moon in Gemini that we last had, and it's crazy to see from one cycle to the next what happens, because you will not remember without journaling. You might think you'll remember, but you won't remember. And because we're about to have all these big shifts of planets, I would look through your photos on your phone, anything you have to write down, like this is what I was feeling and this is some bullet points of what was happening at all the different months this year, because you will then know what the universe is trying to kind of get you to look at a deeper way.
And if you check in with every new and full moon, it's literally taking like 10 minutes to bullet point what's going on every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like it doesn't have to be like, I think I'm a pretty heavy journaler. I know Jen's a pretty heavy journaler, but then there's also times where like you can see like there's like 4 bullet points and we moved on.
Yeah. It's a incredibly helpful time vault for me. I had like all of my journals. So it's a new moon. These are my 3 journals from like the last like probably 4 years, and I went into every single Gemini full and new moon, and you can literally see what you've manifested, and you can literally see the themes of Gemini in your life, and it's so wild. It's worth it for how cool.
Purple journal over here?
I do not.
Okay, well, thing that Jen did differently with this journal that I think might be really helpful for people who have journaling blocks is she had these little tabs that came with her journal. And so there's a section where she checks in at the moon. There is a section where like if she just has something to write down, like reflection wise, like true like Dear Diary vibes, like there's a section for that. But then she has a section that's like tarot readings, maybe there's signs and synchronicities that she keeps saying, like the bears and the deers,
like Jason with your animals. Yeah, signs and symbols.
So like instead of like it being more like a journal, it's almost like
data collection.
Yeah, which then makes it a lot more casual, you know what I mean?
Yes, messenger energy, absolutely.
Lots of to-do lists, same.
Yeah.
I have an ongoing to-do list all the time.
So I did my journal a little different this time, because I was like, every time I pull tarot cards or like an oracle card, I will just go to that section and write down what I got and what the date is. And I also can already see patterns in my card pulls. So instead of like making it such a big, I think the Libra rising really wants to romanticize everything and do it really beautiful. It can also just be way more chaotic, and just you are trying to communicate to a future version of you that needs to know what was going on, and you're just making sure you're able to tell them what was going on.
I also think what's kind of mad genius about the way you're doing it right now is this is kind of like a test for us to like see how this alchemizes, but I have pretty good recognition of, oh, this has come up, but I don't have a great memory of like, was it last month? Was it like 4 weeks ago? I don't know. So for me, a card that I pulled yesterday, I know I've pulled recently, and I have to flip through each journal page trying to find it. Whereas when Jen is having tarot cards pop up, like it's on the same page for her to go, oh, 3 weeks ago it was this. So like the data that you would want is all in one place. Whereas like when you write it in like somewhat traditional journal format, like you then have to kind of like start unpacking a lot to like read through and find your tarot cards, or that's just like one example, like even the signs and synchronicities. So I think that's also one of my favorite parts about your current test. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to do that with my next journal, but I had already started.
It's been a unique way to do it.
Yeah, I love knowing.
I cringe at my past self. That's so real.
Yeah, which is why I think doing it the way you're doing it is really helpful too for people who want to like when they read the things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very loving to just remember that it's really cool to be able to actually see what your growth is. And you can't grow without those messy parts of yourself. I think it comes from that perfectionist wound of wanting to do a really good job. That's really loud with Libra because of that Libra rising. But yeah, I think to understand that you have to mess up to actually become the version of yourself that you are, and it's not necessarily messing up, it's getting reps in to be able to do it better is important.
I feel like I used to cringe on my past self, like I would rag on my past self all the time. I'd be like, that dumb bitch, like, yeah. You know what I mean?
You've gotten a lot better.
And now I'm like, yeah, now I look back and I'm like, and maybe it's just coming with age and post Saturn things, but like I personally now look back at my past self, and even if there's a little bit of cringe in there, because like I don't think it ever fully goes away, you know what I mean? Part of me like can hold space for like, sweet dumb little baby bean, you were trying your best.
Baby bean.
Like you were really trying your best with the tools you had, and I appreciate you for that, because the tools that you were working with have then led me to who I am today, and I like who I am today, even if I look back at you and want to like gag a little bit.
You were so close, but so far. Sweet little thing.
You're like almost there, but not quite. Keep going.
So real.
It comes with a lot more love and like 10% shame.
So real. Yeah. And it comes with grace. The self-love is
I really feel like Saturn, I just went through my Saturn return. So Saturn takes like 30 years to get back to the planet it was when you were born, or like 27 technically. But I'm technically finished with my Saturn return. I'm really at the last degrees of Saturn though. So even though we've hopped into Aries, it's going to retrograde back into Pisces. So I'm still going to feel it until November, but I feel like I've had my final exam. This is just like a bonus chapter, if you will.
Your Saturn return is one of the biggest astrological things that happens to you.
I bet you.
The timing of your Saturn return can vary just depending on what degree it was in. But your Saturn return changes your life.
So that's what I was gonna say is like pre-Saturn is where all of that like and people used to tell me all the time like you need to be nicer to your past self, like your past self was doing their best, and I was like okay, but it could have been better. And now like sitting on the other side of my Saturn return, there's just a lot more like almost like maturity in my brain, where like I'm like they really were trying their best. They really like it can be met in a place of a lot more self-love than just like that's so embarrassing. I mean, it's still a little embarrassing, but like way less embarrassing.
Be an exact period of time where Saturn is exactly lined up where it was where you were born, which is exactly your Saturn return, and that usually lasts for a couple months of like a direct. But you are now
the lessons are all going to be there though the whole time.
Your Saturn return, I think it's really important to take a picture before and after, truly.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much changes in that period of your life. And it doesn't happen again until you're like 58 to 60. So it usually starts at like 57, just depending.
I feel like Saturn tests you to see like, you know, what have you learned in this 30-year cycle? And then if you've learned the lesson, like you get a new cycle of lessons for 30 years. But if you don't, then you just kind of replay the same 30-year cycle, if that makes sense. But with your journaling, now is the perfect time to start, because who I was at the beginning of my Saturn return versus who I am now, I'm so glad, because like I don't think out of the top of my head I could pull all the information I have, but I have like very on top of it journals from the beginning of my Saturn return to today, and I can pull all of those journals and know exactly how each lesson was showing, whether I understood it in the moment I wrote it down or not. And I'm so grateful I have all of that to like really reflect and see everything that I've overcome in the last 2.5 years. One of the most beautiful things, because I didn't actually get super deep into astrology into the beginning of my Saturn return either, is the awareness that it's happening. The awareness that there's lessons that are coming, that they're presenting. So for me, it was in my 4th house, which was like my value system, how I approach family. And for me, every time something big came up, and it was like hard, like ego death on ego death, but every time it came up, it was a little easier to lean into doing something different than like repeating the way I've handled things for the last 30 years, knowing that Saturn was showing me this, and this, because I need to learn how to work past it. Versus if I went through my Saturn return without the knowledge of the astrology, I think I probably would have doubled down on some things that I'm really glad I didn't now. So the fact that you're just starting, and really because it's going to go back into Pisces, this is almost like the, like the summer reading list you used to get in high school where they're like, you should read these books over the summer. Like this is what is happening now for you while Saturn's in Aries for like a second. Is it's like the course hasn't even started yet and you're aware of it. So like I think that will help you so much.
I think Saturn, what happens in your return is it's going to put you on the path that you're meant to be on. And it's either going to have to do it by removing things that you haven't wanted to shift and let go of, that have maybe really been loudly needing to be shifted.
Which might come first.
Or you start getting a lot of blessings because you have really been listening and life starts getting tremendously easier. I think in the end, life feels so good at the end of your Saturn return, because something that has been needing so much wisdom, you have to learn, wherever Saturn is in your birth chart, you have to learn the hard way first before it gets easier. And I think it feels really good to all of a sudden start seeing like a different energy than just repetitive patterns and lessons on the same thing. My Saturn return was in Aquarius, and I think so many themes around my health. Like I started getting major burnout like right in the middle of my Saturn return. I ended my Saturn return like fully embracing my queerness, which was like so funny because Aquarius wants you to just be your own little eccentric weirdo self. So I had so many blocks in embracing all the sides of myself that actually existed, and my Saturn return about took me out, trying to make me embrace those things.
I also want to say that like Jen and I know we keep throwing like all these things out, but the universe also, like, we may not control anything, but we all have choice. Like every expression of any zodiac sign is like strength and shadow, and you can land anywhere on that scale. It's not black and white, good or bad. Like it's just either you're playing into the strength of the lesson or you're playing into the shadow, and that is your choice to play into. You can still double down on any lessons that are trying to say this is not for you. It may not be a great choice, but you still get to make that choice. There's still that within you, and then what comes from that, like, we may not be able to control, but you still get to choose, yes, I do want what's better for my higher self, or no, I'm not ready, and then it will alchemize from there.
We're here for you, Sophie. We got to talk to some people in their second Saturn return. Mm-hmm. So they are in there's like...
They've done it twice
59, 60. And they're like, man, I wish I knew astrology for my first one so that I could have maybe saw it in a wiser way instead of been so personally victimized by my own life. Been like, oh, that makes sense. And so it's been really cool to talk to them because they're on their second one and they're feeling so much more empowered, and the Saturn return can be a really helpful time because it gives you momentum. It's going to reroute you to your path matter what.
Honestly, it's also really refreshing to hear all of these crones like say these things to us, and they're like, oh my gosh, like the wisdom you have at the age that you are is like a little blueprint of what I wish I had. It feels really, really validating when, like, there's times, I was literally just talking about this on the way back from Moon Circle, because we are younger in this community here. Like, Asheville's a very spiritual community, but I think it's a lot of elders. And it's really nice to, like, be in a room full of all of these crones and go home and be like, man, like, there are times where I feel like I'm turning 30 in 2 weeks. I should have all of my shit together. But, like, what is having your shit together? Because every time I'm in these circles and I'm listening to these crones go, oh my gosh, I wish I had that. I wish I had this knowledge that we're talking about right now at your age. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I think it's all a construct.
Yeah. So we get one other little retrograde, and then it'll be Saturn Aries for 2.5 years. But it's crazy. So I will just voice this out because I think this is also important. Saturn has been in Pisces, right? I don't even have a Pisces placement, and what Saturn has done in my 7th house while it has been going through is insane. So you don't even have to have a planet there. Your Saturn return is obviously a very important area and timing in your life, but don't think you're above Saturn's lesson if you don't have a planet in that. If anything, we were saying, like, having a planet in that sign makes you kind of know the energy of that planet a little bit more, or that sign a little bit more. If you don't have a planet in that sign, that energy might be so foreign and so shadowy in your life because you haven't learned how to work with it, that when a planet like Saturn or Pluto that wants you to learn and grow and evolve hits that, you're gonna all of a sudden get a kick in the ass to understand that energy in a way you haven't.
So I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is it doesn't go back into Pisces until September 1st. The bad news is I lied and it doesn't leave till February 13th.
Okay, that was February.
2026. Yeah. I think it's done being conjunct in my chart because I'm a later degree Pisces Saturn. So it's done conjunction November 25th. But we'll still feel the energy until February 13th.
We're going to be camping in the woods when it goes back. That'll be fun. All of you guys, thanks for hanging out. We always appreciate the big love. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Bye.
Bye.